Welcome to the Flourish Frequency, the show where we activate and amplify the frequencies of success, joy, and abundance. I'm your host, Beth Larsen, a high-performance and quantum success coach. If you're ready to ditch the hard hustle and embrace a more effortless flow, then this is the show for you. Together, we'll tap into quantum thinking, harness the laws of the universe, and unlock the secrets to living a life of more. More joy, more energy, more passion, more money, and more meaning. No more simply surviving, we're going beyond thriving. It's time to flourish. The Flourish Frequency Show starts now. Yes, and welcome back to the Flourish Frequency Show, where we activate your energy and amplify your life. And yes, it is time to flourish. I love that that is the final word there on the introduction. So April is here. And I have to say, as I was getting ready for the show here today, one of the things I always do right before a show is run down and grab a glass of water and a cup of tea. I tend to get a froggy voice, and it gets worse during the springtime when there's a lot of my allergies kick in. So I was going down there and I was getting my glass of water and grabbing a cup out of the cupboard to make my tea. And first off, my cups always have sayings on them. They are, one of my clients actually asked me once, she's like, "Are you trying to subliminally send me messages with your mugs?" Because I always have a mug while I'm doing calls. Again, because my throat gets scratchy. So of course I said, yes, of course I am, always, because the messages on my mugs are always very empowering, if you will, and they actually make me feel good. I pick up these mugs, from all different kinds of places. I've gotten these mugs over the years, and I've got a whole variety of them. Some of them say gratitude on them. I've got one that says blessed. I've got one that says good things to come. I've got one that says anything is possible. That's one of my favorites. And of course, I'm always drinking it and my clients see it and we always have a good laugh. But today I pulled one of my favorite mugs and I'll show it for you here. This one says, "The world needs who God made you to be." And on the back, you'll see with my lipstick on it, "Perhaps you were born for such a time as this." And it's the story of Esther from the Bible. But it really made me think today. It's like it was the perfect mug for today, because today's episode is all about, it's called April Showers Preparing to Bloom. It's about that time of year where everything is just getting ready to bloom, just getting ready to come to the surface, and it's starting to. And there's still a lot of work being done underneath the surface. And we're in that state of really still, receiving rain, receiving nourishment. We need to keep watering the seeds. And it's not the time of year to be, pulling things up to see if they're working, if you will, but to allow things to bloom. So I thought it was really interesting. It kind of got me prepared for today. And then when I grabbed my cup of tea, it has a little saying on the tea tag, and it said, "In all things of nature, there is something of the marvelous." That was Aristotle. And again, it was the perfect message here for today, because what I was going to talk about here at the beginning of the show was really what I've been experiencing, like actually in nature, watching nature, and observing nature at work over the last few months, and at the same time been in my own process of preparing to bloom. If we go back a little bit to the beginning of the year, I want to recap kind of the episodes here. I do one episode a month here, and they've sequentially been just coming through me. It's not something I've necessarily planned in advance for these sessions, but I've allowed the themes to come up as they needed to come up. So in January, the theme was all about U version 2.026, and I really focused on Steve Jobs and Apple and the Apple model of evolution and innovation, which is really about iteration. Now, if you've not listened to that show, I really highly recommend you go back and listen to that one, because it's really powerful. It's impactful. It really helps you understand that one of the most successful companies in the world, they never waited to put anything, never wait for anything to be perfect before putting it out in the world. And I think we can all learn a lot from that message. So that was January. In February, the theme was about being soft enough to receive, but strong enough to hold. And for me, that was really coming out of the theme of, it was February, it was Valentine's Day, keeping the heart open, but also keeping your strength. It was about feminine and masculine. And what happens, interestingly enough, when, especially at the beginning of a year, when you put out these big, bold dreams and declare things for your year, and you say, this is what my theme of the year is going to be, and you do all that, you create some inner tension generally. Tension between where you're desiring to go and tension and where you currently are. And initially, there's a lot of momentum with that, but oftentimes you hit this point where it kind of kicks in like, oh no, this is harder than I thought. Or now I actually have to show up differently. It's kind of why you see a lot of people start off the beginning of the year and they're, they're doing the big diet and health revamp at the beginning of the year. And then usually by the third week of January, people have fallen off because the motivation has lagged. And they didn't actually, in the process of deciding and declaring what they were going to go after, didn't necessarily do the work to change the identity behind it, who they were showing up as and who they believe themselves to be so that they could create sustainable change. So February for me was very much that theme of, okay, you've created goals and dreams and you've got these declarations out there. Now you want to say stop soft enough to receive it. So like keep your heart open and keep the feminine energy flowing, which is energy of creation and energy of imagination and curiosity and all that, and keep that going while at the same time being strong enough to hold what's coming. Because in order to expand and receive more and grow into that next level version of yourself, you've got to be able to hold it, right? So there's the feminine energy that wants to grow and wants to evolve, but there's the masculine that's there to support it. So that was very much what that theme of that month was about, and practicing holding that kind of tension in your body that comes from the dissonance between who you are now and who you're growing into, and not collapsing into the tension. So I talk about this a lot on the show and, in my workshops and everything, that tension is actually a creative energy. And most people are conditioned to believe that tension is a bad thing. Tension is only bad when we actually either collapse into it or we resist it and we actually put brakes on. When you actually are working with tension, and if you can lean into it and hold tension in a powerful way, then you actually can create some momentum from it. So it's just like when you pull back on anything, like if you're pulling back on a bow and arrow, you're creating tension on the bow and arrow, but what you're also doing is creating a buildup of energy that when you release it, it's going to go further and faster. So that's why it's so important. And that's why that was the theme of the month of February. And I was following along with this in my own life, right? And then last month the theme was in like a lion and out like a lamb, which was all about how the weather here in the Midwest, we grew up with that saying, and like a lion out like a lamb. And it was about the weather that would come in with tornadoes and thunderstorms and all of that. But by the end of the month would kind of settle in and be this nice soft weather. Now, here in the Midwest this year, it's kind of extended into April with the lion weather. But the point being is the theme was how that was translating metaphorically was very much, okay, you've created this tension and you've learned how to hold it. Now, can you continue to hold it while the chaos around you is swirling? Because what happens when you create that buildup of energy, that energy is actually pulling stuff into it, right? It's pulling ideas and people and circumstances and opportunities into you. And as long as you're holding that powerfully in the center, just like the center of a hurricane or the center of a tornado, where it's calm, as long as you're holding that calmness in the center, then all of that stuff that's getting drawn into you can settle down around you. It can actually settle into your frequency and your vibration. Versus what most people are doing is they end up, because they're not holding the power from within, they end up out in the tornado, out in the hurricane, right? The ideas come and the people are coming, the opportunities are coming, and they collapse into overwhelm. Or they back away or they sabotage in some way, shape, or form. And so all that potential that's within them doesn't end up getting expressed. It never gets to the point where, we're at April showers and we're preparing to bloom. There's nothing left to bloom because it's died along the way. It's collapsed, right? It's not ready. So that's kind of what brought me here to the episode today. And what I've been following along with is that pattern and that path, knowing that I'm here to iterate, knowing that nothing is going to be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect, I should say, when I put it out, because I've been working on a lot of new things. I'm going to tell you a little bit later here today about one of the things that's come out of all this for me. But I've created a new program, a new quiz, an assessment tool, a diagnostic tool, and there's a whole bunch more that's coming through it. But none of that would have been possible if, number one, I waited for any of it to be perfect before putting it out. None of it would be blooming at all. And at the same time, I probably would have collapsed into overwhelm or self-sabotage, procrastination, or just shrunk back to where I was, right? And not allowed this work to be coming through. So that's kind of my story and where it's led up to it. And it was a good reminder today that the world needs who God made us to be, all of us, each and every single one of us. And so it's a good reminder, right? That we're here to be fully expressed in our full potential and to steward that potential through us into the world. And if we actually work with nature and the universe and the way that energies work, and we understand how energy works, then we can actually allow that to be fully expressed. As I was watching nature evolve over the last couple of weeks as well, again, that's kind of my meta experience as I'm like literally watching nature in play. We had a rough winter here. We had, it was a bit of an extended winter, and then we've had really bad storms here. And so I've been kind of waiting for winter for winter to finally subside and for spring to really get here. And when those first signs of spring start to show up, it started about a month ago here in the Midwest, and you would see the tulips and the crocuses and the daffodils all starting to pop up above the surface. And they weren't blooming yet. There was no color yet there, but you could see the shoots coming up above the surface. And that was the first sign that it was coming. But way before that, there was so much happening underneath the surface that was preparing those little plants to bloom. But we finally started to get to see some color in the last couple of weeks. And about 2 weeks ago, I have 2 of these beautiful Japanese cherry blossom trees in my side yard. And they are incredible. They are absolutely beautiful. And every year it's exciting to watch them bloom. So about 2 weeks ago, I started wondering about a month ago, like, I hope they weren't damaged by the winter, by the elements, and that they really do come out again this year. And sure enough, about 2 weeks ago, I started to notice that, oh, sorry, I'm just noticing my screen is freezing. But a couple of weeks ago, I started to notice the little buds starting to pop up on the leaves, or on the branches, I should say. And they look like little berries when they are getting started. They don't in any way, shape, or form look like what's about to happen. And so these beautiful little berries were popping up, and every day I would pass by it when I went to get the mail. And the berries were getting a little bit bigger and a little bit redder in color, and it was getting exciting, and I knew it was about to happen. But I was also noticing, as I was going past neighbors' houses, some of their trees had already blossomed, and I thought, what's going on? Why are my trees not blossoming? But I just kept trusting it, and I knew it was coming. And then 2 days ago, Today's Thursday. Yeah, it was Tuesday. Tuesday morning, I walked out, and overnight, these two trees had just burst into bloom. I mean, almost shocking. These trees, they doubled in size from what was there the day before, and these big, full cloud-like blossoms that just filling the yard, and even so much so spilling out into the street. Like I really was thinking I have to get those pruned so that they actually can grow stronger and not spill out into the street at the same time. And the fragrance, you could smell the fragrance when I walked past. It was soft and it was subtle, but it was just beautiful and unmistakable. And I just sat there and I just took it all in. And I realized, there was nothing I needed to do to make sure that those trees did what they were meant to do, right? There really was nothing I needed to do. Are there things that I can do to take care of them? Yeah, I can get them pruned. And I will, definitely. But nature itself was waiting to express. I just got to witness it. And it was just beautiful to see. And then I looked over into the front yard and noticed, in the middle of our front yard, we have a magnolia tree. And it's right in the middle of the front lawn. And this year, this was the one that I was really wondering if it was going to bloom or not, because every year it struggles a little bit with the weather. It's not really an Midwest kind of tree, if you will. It's more southern. But I noticed yesterday a few flowers up at the top, up by where the sun is, and more on the way. And today I looked out, and sure enough, there were more happening. So what does this all have to do with today's episode and today's conversation? I would say in a very meta way, everything. It has everything to do with it because, again, as I've been watching all this unfolding in nature, and I've been also watching my own process of unfolding and preparing to bloom, nature made me reminded me of a few things. Not everything blooms at the same time, first and foremost, and that's how life happens too. And everything, if you give it time and you plant it in the right conditions, then things do bloom. And that's where things really kind of got interesting for me here. We react, how should I say it? The way we react and the way we engage with life for ourselves is very much going to determine whether or not we bloom, whether or not we have projects and things that we want to bring into this world that get to bloom, and whether we ourselves as human beings feel like we're blooming. Some plants, just like different plants, react differently. Some plants look like they're just barely hanging on, right? That they just made it through the winter, but just barely. The conditions were harsh. The environment wasn't necessarily the most supportive, and all of their energy is really just focused on going into staying alive. Those plants are the ones that are really just surviving or fighting to survive, right? And then there are other plants out there that are just starting to push through the ground, like those crocuses and the daffodils and all that. They break above the surface and they're reaching for the light, but they work for it. They actually work for it. They have to stretch and strain, and they try to grow, and they strive. So we've got survivors and we've got strivers. And they're beautiful when they actually do start to bloom, right? Then you see the ones that are really blooming and really growing, and they're fuller and they're stronger and they're more stable. And they're not just reaching anymore, but they're actually engaging and responding with the environment, and they're supported by the environment. They have growth that feels sustainable. Those are the plants that are out there thriving. And then there are the plants that are actually in full bloom. The explosion of color, the fullness, beauty that extends beyond the plant itself. Bees show up, which they did already show up. I couldn't believe it. As I was standing by the cherry blossoms yesterday, there were already bees out, which I didn't think they came out this early, but sure enough, the bees are out and they're pollinating. And that already allows what's growing to actually have the potential to multiply and to carry far and wide. And those would be an example of what flourishing looks like, right? So you've got these different ways of engaging and different results that different plants are getting, but also the same thing for ourselves. When we engage life differently in these different ways, we get different results in our lives, right? It mirrors the way that we operate and engage with life and the ways we relate to growth, the ways we experience life. Some people are out there just surviving or fighting to survive. Others are striving and pushing and reaching for the light. And that can create a lot of great initial success, but over time, if there's not enough room to grow, I think of it like a plant that's planted in a pot, right? And the plant may be doing really well at first, but eventually it starts to get bigger than the pot. It starts to outgrow it. And one of two things happens. I've noticed this. Either it breaks the pot or it shrinks back to fit the pot that it's in. And that's very much what happens with thriving. If you don't continue to grow and expand and move into, striving, if you don't continue to grow and expand and plant yourself in a space where you have more room to grow, right? If you don't build up your capacity and actually put yourself in an environment that's more conducive, you will either break the pot you're in, meaning end up in burnout, and I am raising my hand to say that that happened to me, or you'll shrink yourself to fit the pot that you're in and not allow yourself to grow and expand. In which case, what you are meant to be, right, it doesn't get expressed. It doesn't happen. And then the flourishing, right? Those are people who are stepping up fully into their power and fully flourishing, and their power, their flourishing is a state beyond thriving. It's going beyond them at that point, right? It's actually having impact. And that flourishing space is, I always think of it as the place where we go quantum, where things happen faster, pick up speed, you compound your results. People start talking about you and spreading the word about you, and your message and your impact go far reaching. That's the place of flourishing. So we're going to take a quick break here, but I want to invite you, as you're listening to all this, how does it land for you? How does it feel in your body? What does it feel like when you think about the way that you've been operating? Have you, when you hear these different phases, have you been operating in a place of surviving? Have you been operating a place of striving? Maybe you're at thriving. And have you experienced yet what really full flourishing feels like? Just notice that for yourself and notice what it feels like if you're in striving or surviving. What does it feel like, the thought of actually expanding into more? Preparing to bloom is all about that. It's about giving you the tools and the support to help you expand into more, because the world needs who you're here meant to be. Okay? So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about that a little bit further.
Cut the shit. Stop struggling to feel present. Stop being taken advantage of. Express how you feel and stop making choices based on what other people think. Intuition Unleashed, a Revolution in Personal Liberation podcast, is your go-to resource for combining guidance with mental health and spirituality and solving your questions about why you can't seem to catch a break and find your true happiness. And you can find more episodes at becknelson.com/podcast.
Are you struggling with unresolved emotions or recurring patterns? Tune into Beyond Birth Trauma, From Burden to Brilliance with me, Shannon O'Flaherty, on Transformation Talk Radio. On the second Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, we'll explore your own birth experiences and consider how they might be affecting your current life patterns to start your journey towards self-discovery and healing. For more information, visit shannonbtb.com. That's shannonbtb.com.
Okay, welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about these different ways of operating and different ways of engaging with life, which really have everything to do with the results that you get in your life and whether or not you are prepared to bloom, whether you are prepared to evolve and grow and bring your work out into the world in whatever way, shape, or form that is for you. And when I look back at this, first I want to make a point of this. As I said, these are ways of engaging with life. These are not actual identities. So when I say surviving and striving and thriving and flourishing, it's not an identity. You are not a survivor or a thriver. Those are ways that you're experiencing life. Okay, so I don't want you to hear that and put it in as an identity, but it is very much informed by the identity that you're carrying about yourself. If you are seeing yourself as a survivor, you're going to show up as a survivor and unconsciously actually create scenarios and situations in your life to survive. Like that actually happens when that's the identity that you carry for yourself. You take something that may have been a circumstance that you had to survive and turn it into an identity. And when you make that your entire identity, it becomes very difficult to outperform the identity. So I wanted to make that really clear because when we're talking about these different ways of operating and these different stages that you can be in, even as a flourisher, I'm going to say don't take it on as a full identity. Recognize who you are and that it's a way that you're operating. And at any given point in time, you can be operating in any one of these stages. And your ability to move yourself into the stages of flourishing and thriving has everything to do with your awareness and how you're showing up, right? I can look back on my entire life and see where I have been in all four of these stages at different points in time, right? When I spent, as I mentioned before, I spent a lot of my life in that striving place. And I was rewarded for it. I had a good job, I had the promotions, I had the success, I had the big salary, the bonuses, the company car, all of that stuff, right? It was just a constant cycle of reward for working hard and all the effort that I was putting in. And so it was reinforcing that. So I continued to do what I was always doing. And I did start to move past that into thriving from times, but there were many times I didn't. There were many times I stayed in that place of striving. And now, as I've worked with people for, gosh, the last 10 years, coaching people, I can see that pattern where a lot of people who are high achievers end up in that energy of striving, which is good until it's not, right? It's good until you start to outgrow the pot and you break it or you shrink yourself back, you sabotage yourself back. So you can go for a long time in that state of striving, but if eventually you don't outgrow it, it'll backfire on you, right? So that's what happened to me. Burnout, right? And I had to walk away from it and I had to take care of the pot that I was planted in so that I could actually grow in a bigger way. And it was during that time that I recognized there was a very big distinction between being a high achiever and being a high performer. And of course, that was when I got certified as a high performance coach. And again, that was almost 10 years ago now. So understanding, the role of identity and energy and capacity and all that. And it really helped me understand how to move out of the striving and into the thriving mode. So I can see where I was in that in that state of striving and also backsliding very quickly into just surviving. When I was in the place of burnout, and my body was literally in just surviving. I had really bad brain fog and I had no energy. And I used to just say, I felt like I was dying on the vine. Those would be the words I would use. Now it's funny that I use this whole metaphor, right? Because that's exactly what I was experiencing. I was like a plant that was dying on the vine. So I had backslid from striving and into surviving. But I also was able to move back initially into striving, where I was still thinking I had to figure it all out. And I had to, my initial mindset was I needed to fix what I broke so I could go back and do it better. That was my first thought. And when I started to work with it very differently and to create a different identity from it and work with energy differently, then I was able to actually move into that energetic of thriving, where the work was happening through me, and I was able to create more through other people as well and make a bigger impact in that way. And then I've also reached that state of flourishing many times, and I've seen where I backslide sometimes into thriving, and then I know exactly what to do to move back into flourishing again, into that state. And this is how it shows up. I know it is the minute I'm back in that energy again, because I start to see, I start getting these opportunities coming out of nowhere. I start having people refer more people to me again, like in a major influx. I have people reaching out to have me teach workshops, to do interviews, to go on summits, things like that. And I haven't even initiated it. Why is that happening? Because I've worked with my energy to expand it to the point where it's calling it in. And I'm part of an ecosystem now, right? I'm not just thriving on my own. I'm in an ecosystem, and I'm pouring into others at the same time. As much as people are referring me, as much as people are reaching out to me, I'm doing the same for other people. And I do that very intentionally, not with the intention of getting anything from it. The people who are reaching out to me, I'm not being reciprocal of, oh, it's not a tit for tat, like you did this for me, so I'm going to do that for you. It's an energy of, I'm letting myself receive. This goes back to February's call, right? Strong, soft enough to receive and strong enough to hold. And that means I can also give, because I'm not giving to others from a state of depletion. I'm giving from overflow. And so even if I'm not giving back to the same people who are giving to me, I'm giving in other ways. And I'm not expecting anything from return from the people that I'm giving to. Like, it's a full give because it's coming from total abundance. So this is really very much, how I've experienced it in my own life and in many different times. Now, what's been really interesting for me, especially this year, is everything that has been coming through as I practiced holding this energy at a level that I don't know that I've ever fully held it like this. So February's theme, soft enough to receive, strong enough to hold, was all about holding that tension, that creative energy. And I've done it more in a bigger way than I ever have. I allowed myself to really relax the body, but hold the tension and move the tension in my energy body into my solar plexus. Like, I consciously using my intention to move that energy there and hold it, not automatically move into my striving mode of, okay, I've got to figure out how, I set these big goals in January, but now I've got to figure out how it's all going to come together. Like, I didn't move into striving. And that would have been my way in the past of like, okay, now I've got the big goals. Now I've got to figure it out. Now I've got to make it happen. Instead, I really held the energy of, I have zero idea how this is all going to come together and no idea how it's going to happen, but I have the vision, right? Like Steve Jobs had a vision of 1,000 songs in your pocket. And he had no idea how the iPhone or the iPod or any of that was going to come together. He had the vision. He didn't need to know how. He held the vision. So I was holding my own vision, and I was practicing holding that tension and allowing that energy to build. And the further the month goes along, of course, the tension gets stronger, right? If nothing's happening yet. But for me, I had been practicing this, and I'm not new to practicing holding energy, but I've just done it so much more powerfully this year than I have in the past. And as I was doing this, all of these ideas started to flood in, and all of these awarenesses were coming in, and people were saying things, and it was synchronicities and ideas and everything literally flooding my mind, flooding in. It could have been overwhelming. And if I was, again, not practicing this, it very much would have been overwhelming for me. But what happened, because I was holding it, and I started to take some actions on what was coming through, and for every action I took, more continued to flow through, and more continued to come into my awareness, and more opportunities were continuing to come. And rather than turn down opportunities that I really, truly desired, and also not just saying yes to everything, having discernment, I was able to really tune into my heart and actually feel what felt expansive and say yes to my yeses and no to my nos. And then I experienced March, right? That's what it was. It was in like a lion, out like a lamb. I was holding that power in the center, and everything was swirling around me with so much energy. And it felt a little chaotic at times, but I held the power, and it all started to settle in. And that's exactly what happened over the last 6 weeks. Everything started to settle in, and all of the stuff started to come to fruition, and much of it preparing to bloom right now. So I just wanted to share that with you, with everyone there, and I hope that that's kind of landing for you. I hope that this is resonating for some of you out there, and that you're seeing yourself maybe in these ways of operating, but not as an identity, and actually giving you some hope, some optimism that if you can actually practice this, there's so much incredible stuff that will come through it. So we're going to take another quick break here. When we come back, I want to introduce you to one of the things that actually came through all of this. It's actually a diagnostic tool that I put together that actually helps you identify where you're operating, how you're operating, and the next steps to moving you forward. So we're going to take another quick break, and we'll talk about that when we come back. Thanks.
Cut the shit. Stop struggling to feel present. Stop being taken advantage of. Express how you feel and stop making choices based on what other people think. Intuition Unleashed, a revolution in personal liberation podcast, is your go-to resource for combining guidance with mental health and spirituality and solving your questions about why you can't seem to catch a break and find your true happiness. And you can find more episodes at becknelson.com/podcast.
Are you struggling with unresolved emotions or recurring patterns? Tune into Beyond Birth Trauma, From Burden to Brilliance with me, Shannon O'Flaherty, on Transformation Talk Radio. On the second Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, we'll explore your own birth experiences and consider how they might be affecting your current life patterns to start your journey towards self-discovery and healing. For more information, visit shannonbtb.com. That's shannonbtb.com.
We are all born with gifts that we are meant to use to improve the world. Join me, Vicki Todd, and Dr. Pat on Shine Delusion Shine, the radical art of dreaming beyond boundaries, each fourth Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. Shine Delusion Shine is a springboard to believing, dreaming, and thinking beyond the ordinary, and a catalyst to living a more fulfilling, destiny-driven life. For more information, visit vickiworldart.com.
All right, welcome back. So just before break, I mentioned that I wanted to share something with you that was now in the process of blooming or just coming to the surface here for me. And it's just the beginning of so much, quite honestly. But one of the things that kind of came through all this process, and I think I may have said I created this. I wouldn't actually say I created it. It's something that actually just came through. It's something that I observed into reality. It's something that as I made observations and was really tuning in and paying attention and watching and observing the way everything was working, it just literally flowed through. And it came through as the Flourish quotient. So, a quotient is a measurement, right? It's a measure of intelligence. And in this case, it's a measure of intelligence with how you are currently engaging life and growing and evolving or not. So just like an IQ score measures your intellectual intelligence, and it measures things like cognitive abilities and things like your logical reasoning, memory, speed of information processing, all of that goes into an IQ score. An EQ measures your emotional intelligence, which is things like self-awareness and empathy, emotional regulation, and relationship management. Your FQ, or your flourish quotient, is measuring your ability to grow, to lead, and to succeed, and to actualize your full potential and contribution into the world. And it is an intelligence because we're working with the natural intelligence in our body, in how we're operating and working with it. The flourish quotient is shaped by 4 key dimensions. The first one is your identity. So as I said earlier, though, the flourish quotient, these stages themselves are not an identity, but they are a reflection of the identity that you are holding about yourself. It's not your title, it's not what you do, it's not actually who you are. It's what you believe about yourself, what you believe is possible for you. And even, I would say deeper than that, what you believe about how life works and the way it works with you. And that becomes the lens through which you make every decision in your life. The second dimension of the flourish quotient is really about your emotional and physical capacity. It's your energy and your nervous system in particular, right? If you have a system that doesn't feel safe to grow, it won't. You can have the vision. You can have the best strategy in the world. But if your body is locked into protection mode, you're either going to hold yourself back or you will push yourself into burnout. So being able to measure your capacity emotionally and physically, because they impact each other, right? If you don't expand your capacity to emotionally and physically hold more, you can't have more, right? You can't be more. You can't show up as more. And if the idea of more sounds like suffocating or hard or like you're going to have to sacrifice, that's, again, that goes partially back to identity and partially the way you have wired your nervous system. The beautiful thing is we know these days our brain and our nervous systems are not hardwired. They may be deeply wired, but they're not hardwired. They are not permanent. We can rewire them. We can work with them. We can actually re-regulate our nervous systems so that we can actually allow ourselves to step into this incredible growth and expansion. The third dimension of the flourish quotient is your creative orientation. It's how you create results in your life. And this is a big one because there is a spectrum of the way that people create results. And it ranges from no power at all, meaning they're letting results happen to them in their life, so they're not actually doing anything to create, to force, that striving space, right? Where you're pushing and efforting and putting tons of energy into it, all the way up to source. What I mean by that is where you give up the force and you step into personal power and you activate that power from within. You stop outsourcing it, but you allow that power to move through you and into other people to source power, where you are one with source and you are allowing source to be your source, which it always is. But so oftentimes we take ourselves out of that flow of energy, right? We disconnect from it, especially when we think we have to figure everything out ourselves, or we think that source has abandoned us. And when I say source, that's God, universe, spirit, whatever that means for you. But there is something greater than all of us that created all of us, right? That is within all of us. When we disconnect from that, we actually disconnect from the most powerful resource that is available. And when we plug back into it, you access infinite resources. That's where flourishing happens, truly. I want to just note too that source is never unplugged from us, ever. But we can definitely unplug from our end. And that impacts the results that you're getting, right? And then the fourth dimension is external support. So that can be the environment that you are in. It can also be tools and people and teams that you pour into. You know, if you only have yourself doing all the work, then your capacity for expansion is very little. But if you start hiring more people and expanding and getting people or getting more tools that help you um, expand your impact, then you can start to go and expand again, right? But it means giving up control in order to do that. You have to step away from thinking that you have all the answers to everything. And again, if you're not wired in a way that that feels safe, then you're going to stay in that control space and not let yourself expand. The external support also is something that, and again, this goes back to the identity side of things. If your belief is that you don't have support, or that your environment is not good, but you're not doing anything to actually change your environment, to surround yourself with people who are at that next level so that you can tune into that energy and allow yourself to not be pushed forward, but pulled forward, right? Actually, it's almost like an energy. The way it feels like for me is when I surround myself with that energy, I am being pulled into it in a positive way, right? I'm in an expansive way. But then I've also got that source energy behind me that's like just got my back, basically. It's not pushing me forward, but it's got my back. So it feels secure. It feels stable. And that's very much what it feels like when you start to really move into that flourishing state. So people, resources, tools, the environment you place yourself in, not just the environment you're in by default. No one thrives or flourishes in isolation. It doesn't happen that way, right? Our largest opportunity to expand and to grow and to evolve and to be like that big field of flowers. It's an entire ecosystem. It's not just one plant, one flower all on its own, fighting for light, fighting to survive. But to be in that huge ecosystem doesn't happen in isolation. Right, that's the definition of an ecosystem. And an ecosystem is something that is self-sustaining and each part contributes to the whole. That's what happens when you reach that stage of flourishing. So when you look at all these together, identity, capacity, how you create, and the support you have, you start to get a real clear picture of how you are currently operating. So the Flourish Quotient quiz that you can take, it's a diagnostic tool that will help identify which stage you're currently operating in. And I keep wanting to repeat this because it's so important to me that you really take away from this that it's not your identity. It's not who you are. It's just the way you're currently operating. And if you are at a place where you are feeling the nudge, the pull, the desire for growth, for evolution, for your next level, if you have projects or ideas or work that you know that is meant to be birthed into this world and it has not been happening, when you take the assessment, you're going to see why it has not been happening. You may already know why after listening to all of this. It may kind of reconcile for you there. But you will get a real clear picture as to why that's not happening. And the good news is, once you know, now you can actually do something with it. Now you can start to take the steps to actually lean in. But here's the thing, it's going to be uncomfortable at first. No matter what stage you're in, to allow yourself to move into the next stage, it's going to require getting comfortable with the uncomfortable because it's unknown, right? It's untested territory for you. It will test you in many ways, right? To see if you're really willing to move into it, to move into that discomfort. But if you can handle holding the discomfort, which is something I teach you, right? If you can handle holding the discomfort, if you can allow yourself to be soft enough to receive, but strong enough to hold, then what comes through it is beyond your wildest imagination. And it's easier than you could ever imagine. There's a little discomfort along the way, but it's only painful if you actually resist it, if you put the brakes on. Painful in that it could be physical pain in that your body is like wanting more and you're not letting it. And so that actually eats away over time. If you're not fulfilling anything and you're just living a life that's kind of numb, that actually starts to, you enter a state of dying, right? Where you're actually no longer living and no longer growing and no longer evolving. So it's not healthy, and it will show up in your health. And it can also feel, challenging. So my point being is, in order to grow and evolve to the next level, being comfortable getting uncomfortable is a part of it. But it does not have to be painful. And especially if you're surrounding yourself with support, with people and tools and strategies and coaches and mentors and community and all of it that is actually supporting you in your growth and evolution, then it can be a whole lot easier, right? Still a little uncomfortable, but a whole lot easier. And things will happen faster that way, especially when you hit flourishing. Like I said, that's a stage where things go a little quantum and you get to speed everything up. So when you think about how you've been operating and these different dimensions that are contributing to it and the results that you've been getting in your own life, here's what I would ask you to reflect on. Which one of these stands out to you right away? Is it your identity and what you believe is possible? Who you believe you are and what you think, the way the world works with you? Is it your capacity? What can you actually hold without collapsing into overwhelm? Is it how you're creating your results? Are you getting no results because you're actually not putting in any effort at all? Or are you over-efforting? Are you pushing? Are you forcing? Or have you stepped back and started to allow things to actually happen? Or is it your support? Or have you been pushing support away? Have you been trying to do it all on your own? Do you hold the identity of somebody who's independent and therefore doesn't need help? That actually is someone who's going to end up staying in a striving space until it's no longer sustainable. That was me, by the way, at one point in time. But I ask you to reflect on all this, because wherever your awareness goes, that's where your next level of expansion begins. That's what's opening up for you. So I mentioned before, I created the Flourish Quotient quiz. We're going to put it down and the link to take it down in the show notes here. Know that I actually literally just finished it today. So the quiz, yeah, I have to check and make sure everything is like all linked up and everything. I know it is in terms of linked up, but it's not perfect in terms of it's not the prettiest landing page and all of that, because I wasn't going to wait to put it out there. This is work that I know could be impacting and making a difference with people. And I'm taking on the Apple model here, and I'm going to iterate it. I'll make the page prettier and make sure that it's all good to go later, but I didn't want to wait. I'm putting the work out into the world because I know it's meant to be out in the world and it's meant to make a difference. So I hope, if nothing else, that you take that away from this session today as well. And yeah, so you don't have to guess which way you're operating currently. What you'll see too is if you take the quiz, there is a short masterclass where I go a little bit more in depth into all of this. I think it's like a 22-minute masterclass that you can watch. So you'll get your own individual results, and then the masterclass will explain a little bit more. And it's also, I'm teasing up a little bit about the next program that's coming through as well. I have a new program that will be launching next month. I will tell you about it more next month as well. It is called Fluorescence. And fluorescence quite literally means bursting into bloom. So I believe that that's what we are all here for. And I am here to support anyone who is ready for that in their own life. April showers brings May flowers. What better time to launch a program called Fluorescence than the month of May, where everything is starting to burst into bloom, including all of us. Okay, so take the Flourish Quotient quiz, see what level you're operating at. Stay tuned for more information, for more support and how I can help you. And until next time, I want to invite you to stay rooted, to keep expanding, and to keep flourishing. I'll see you next month. Thank you for tuning in to the Flourish Frequency Show with me, Beth Larsen. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and are leaving with a heart full of inspiration and a mind buzzing with the possibilities of more. Tune in every third Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio for more frequency boosting conversations. And if you want more help getting into your Flourish flow and stepping into the possibilities of more, you can find me at BethLarsenCoaching.com. That's BethLarsenCoaching.com, Larsen with an E.